AITA, entitled Aunt tried to take over my room and my life in Los Angeles. Hey Reddit, first time posting, so bear with me. English isn't my first language, but this story is too wild to keep to myself. If it sounds like something out of a bad soap opera, trust me, living through it was 100 times worse. I'm originally from Poland, but for the past few years, I've been living in Los Angeles with my parents. Moving from a quiet town in Poland to the bustling, chaotic streets of LA was a culture shock, but I'd slowly carved out a comfortable life here. Our house wasn't huge or fancy, but it was ours. It had become my sanctuary, my safe place. The house is a modest one-story home nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Palm trees line the streets, and the sun always seems to cast this warm golden glow on everything. It's a peaceful pocket of the city where the hustle and noise of downtown feel miles away. My room was my favorite part of the house, a cozy space filled with books, posters, and little souvenirs that made it feel like my personal retreat. But as I'm sure you've guessed, all of that changed when my entitled aunt, EA, and her entitled son, ES, barged into my life. It started out like any other day. My mom had gone to visit her best friend, leaving just me and my dad at home. I was in my room, gaming with my best friend online. The room was warm and cozy, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. I was completely immersed in my Roblox game, chatting and laughing with my friend through my headset, when suddenly I heard this loud, frantic banging on the front door. At first, I ignored it, thinking it might be a delivery driver or a neighbor. But the banging didn't stop. It got louder and more insistent, shaking the door on its hinges. I muted my game and headed downstairs, my heart pounding. I wasn't sure if I should open the door. What if it was an emergency? Or worse, someone dangerous? I peeked through the peephole, and my stomach dropped. Standing on the other side was my entitled aunt, looking furious and impatient. Behind her was her son, ES, dragging a giant suitcase and clutching a tablet like it was a lifeline. I opened the door cautiously, barely getting a word out before EA pushed past me. EA, finally. Took you long enough. All right, which room is for us? Her tone was sharp and commanding, as if she were checking into a hotel she'd already booked. I blinked, completely dumbfounded. Me, what? Room? What are you talking about? EA, oh, never mind. We'll find it ourselves. She brushed past me, dragging her suitcase behind her, her heels clacking against the hardwood floor with every step. Meanwhile, ES stomped inside and immediately started looking around like he was casing the joint. ES, do you have an Xbox? And I want the Wi-Fi. His voice was whiny, and his eyes darted around the room, zeroing in on my gaming setup in the corner. EA, of course, he'll give it to you. Now, where's the Wi-Fi password? My sweet baby needs it more than you. Her words hit me like a slap. They weren't asking, they were demanding. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides, and I could feel my face getting hot. Me, no? You're not moving in here, and you're definitely not getting the Wi-Fi password. EA stopped in her tracks and turned to face me, her eyes narrowing into slits. EA, we're family. Family helps each other. It's not like we're strangers. We need to stay here, and I know it's not a problem for you. Her voice had this biting edge, dripping with entitlement. I opened my mouth to argue, but before I could get a word out, she brushed past me again, heading for the stairs. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what was happening. My aunt and cousin had just barged into my house, declared they were moving in, and were now treating it like their own personal property. I snapped out of it and ran after her, blocking her path to the stairs. Me, wait, what are you doing? You can't just move in. This is my house. EA let out an exasperated sigh, like I was a toddler throwing a tantrum over a toy. EA, oh, don't be such a baby. We're not staying forever. You've had this house all to yourself for long enough. It's time to learn how to share. Family comes first, remember? Before I could respond, I heard footsteps behind me. My dad emerged from the basement, holding a wrench in one hand and looking confused. "Dad, what's going on?" EA's demeanor changed instantly. Her face softened, and she clasped her hands together like a character in a melodrama. "EA, oh, we just need a place to stay for a little while. It's been so hard lately, and we didn't know where else to go. Please, just until we get back on our feet." Her voice cracked just enough to sell the act, and I could see my dad's resolve crumble. My dad is one of the kindest people I know, but sometimes his kindness makes him blind to manipulation. "Dad, sure, you can stay, but just for a bit." I stared at him in disbelief, my stomach sinking. How could he not see through her fake tears? I wanted to scream, but all I could do was turn and storm back to my room, slamming the door behind me. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. There was banging, shuffling, and what sounded like a suitcase being dragged across the floor above me. My stomach churned as I rushed upstairs to see what was going on. When I opened the door to my room, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Boxes were stacked high, spilling over onto my desk and bed. Random bags of clothes were scattered across the floor, and ES toys were strewn everywhere like landmines. And there he was, lounging on my bed, munching on a bag of chips and holding the TV remote like a king on his throne. Me, what the hell is this? EA barely looked up from where she was unpacking her clothes into my closet. "EA, it's our stuff. We needed space for our things, obviously." Me, why is it in my room? Why not the other one? EA, because I want to feel comfortable, and your room has the best light. You've been in here long enough, it's time for a little change. My jaw dropped. Her tone was so dismissive, so casual, like I was being unreasonable for objecting. "Yes, it's my room now. Get used to it." He didn't even look at me as he said it, his eyes glued to the screen. I felt tears welling up in my eyes again, but I couldn't let them see me cry. I turned and ran downstairs, barely holding it together. My dad was in the kitchen, sipping his coffee and reading the paper like nothing was wrong. I stormed in, slamming my hands on the table. Me, "Dad, do you see what they've done? They've taken my room." He looked up, startled, but his response was as infuriating as I expected. "Dad, sighing, just let them stay for now. It's only temporary." I wanted to scream. Temporary? They were already acting like they owned the place. Meanwhile, EA was upstairs talking about redecorating, and ES had claimed every piece of technology in sight. For the past week, I've been banished to the couch in the living room. EA complains constantly about the Wi-Fi, the food, and the size of the house, while ES uses my gaming setup without asking, leaving greasy fingerprints on everything. My parents refuse to stand up to them because they don't want to cause conflict. So Reddit, am I the asshole for wanting my room and my life back? And how do I even begin to get these freeloaders out of my house? I'm desperate. Help. The next few days were a nightmare, and I don't use that word lightly. My aunt and her son had completely taken over the house, and no matter how much I tried to talk to my parents about it, they just brushed me off. My mom had come home a couple of days later and was clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but she was just as reluctant to confront EA as my dad. EA, on the other hand, had no such reservations. She strutted around the house like she owned the place. She took over the kitchen, cooking meals that no one asked for and leaving the sink piled high with dishes. She constantly criticized the house, complaining about how small and outdated everything was, yet somehow felt entitled to stay indefinitely. EA, this house is so cramped. Honestly, it's amazing you've been able to live here for this long. If I were you, I'd consider moving somewhere bigger. You know, for the family. For the family. The nerve of this woman to waltz into our lives uninvited and act like we owed her anything. And her son? He was even worse. ES treated my gaming setup like it was his birthright. Every time I walked into the living room, he was either sprawled out on the couch playing Fortnite or sitting at my desk, yelling at the screen while crumbs from whatever snack he was eating fell into the keyboard. One particularly awful evening, I came home from school exhausted and ready to unwind. All I wanted was to grab my laptop and do some homework in peace, but as soon as I walked into the house, I knew something was wrong. I could hear loud music blasting from upstairs, accompanied by the sound of ES shouting. I rushed to my room, hoping against hope that this wasn't what I thought it was. When I opened the door, my heart sank. ES had thrown some kind of mini party in my room. There were wrappers and soda cans everywhere, and he had invited a couple of his friends over. They were all sitting on my bed, laughing and playing games on my computer. Me, what is going on in here? ES barely even looked at me. ES, we're playing. Chill out. Me, this is my room. You can't just... Before I could finish, EA appeared behind me, her arms crossed and an annoyed look on her face. EA, oh, stop being so dramatic. They're just kids having fun. You've been so selfish about your room lately. Let them enjoy it for once. Selfish. She called me selfish. In that moment, I thought my head was going to explode. I stormed downstairs to find my parents and demanded they do something about the situation. My dad just sighed, rubbing his temples like he was tired of hearing me complain. Dad, they're family. Just let it go for now. It's not permanent. Me, not permanent? They've been here for a week and they've completely taken over. ES is throwing parties in my room, for crying out loud. My mom looked like she wanted to say something, but she kept quiet. I could see the conflict on her face. She wanted to stand up for me, but she didn't want to upset EA. It was like I was living in a house full of enablers. A few nights later, things hit a boiling point. I was lying on the couch, trying to fall asleep despite the uncomfortable cushions digging into my back, when I heard a loud crash from upstairs. I bolted upright and ran to investigate, only to find that ES had knocked over one of my shelves while messing around with his friends. Books, collectibles, and a few fragile items I'd been saving for years were scattered across the floor, some of them broken beyond repair. I lost it. I yelled at ES, who just shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. EA came rushing in, of course, ready to defend her precious son. EA, you're overreacting. It's just some junk. I'm sure your parents can replace it. Me, junk? These were my things. You've completely ruined my room, my stuff, my life. My voice cracked, and I felt tears streaming down my face. EA rolled her eyes, as if my emotions were an inconvenience to her. EA, honestly, if you're going to act like this, maybe it's better if we stay in your room longer. Clearly, you need to grow up a little. That was the final straw. I stormed out of the house and went to stay with a friend for the night. When I told them everything that had been going on, they were horrified. Friend, you need to put your foot down. This isn't normal. Your parents can't let them walk all over you like this. Hearing someone else validate my feelings gave me the strength I needed. I decided that the next day, I would confront my parents once and for all. When I got home, I sat them down and laid everything out. Me, I can't live like this anymore. They've ruined my room, destroyed my things, and completely taken over the house. If you don't tell them to leave, I'm going to pack my stuff and stay somewhere else. My dad looked taken aback, and my mom finally spoke up. Mom, he's right. This has gone too far. They've overstayed their welcome. For the first time, my parents seemed to understand just how miserable I was. Later that day, they had a tense conversation with EA, who, of course, acted like the victim. EA, I can't believe you're kicking us out. After everything we've been through? But my parents stood firm, and within a week, she and ES were gone. The house felt peaceful again, but it took me a long time to forgive them for letting things get so bad in the first place. So, Reddit, Am I the asshole for standing up for myself? Should I have handled things differently? All I know is that I'll never look at family the same way again.